All right, so we're at part 2 of the moon landing. We've discussed where we all are at, and we've discussed a few of the potential holes in the moon landing and what may or may not be real.
I think those holes are cheese.
That's it. The moon is cheese, and we're talking about that. So we want to jump right into a few more challenges that are brought up in that American Moon series, debunking the moon landings. So one of the big ones is shaky cameras.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we left off last time. So shaky cameras, and also which ties into the antennas being the broadcast antennas being able to reach Earth.
Yeah. So let's talk briefly about what the debunking or what the issue is with it, right? So from my understanding, and maybe you guys can shed more light on this. Basically, you see lots of shaking, lots of movement, and the argument is that the amount of movement would have knocked the signal from the moon to the Earth completely off, and they should have lost reception, right? In like a nutshell, right?
Or it should have been degraded significantly.
Right.
On the
NASA
so on the rover, they have an antenna that's on the rover that's directly broadcasting. So, if that goes out within a certain distance, they would lose video footage.
Right.
So in the American Moon documentary, they state, before they're showing the footage, they say, if the camera shakes, a shake equals a shake on the antenna as well.
Sure.
Now, the antenna is actually not connected to the camera, so that's not exactly true. So the camera could move, and the camera does move because they can also control the camera from NASA. That's how it pans around and moves.
Well, let's just talk about the challenge that they have, though.
But yeah, in the documentary, they're claiming that the shaking of the camera equals the shaking of the antenna, which I don't think is true. So we'll watch a little bit of footage of the camera actually shaking in context, and it doesn't look nearly as severe as they make it look in the documentary, for one. But also, in the documentary, they also state
that to be clear, they're not making it look like anything, though. They're using the spacecraft.
Well, they're only showing you shaky camera
NASA
footage
video.
for like over and over again. They're just showing you shaky video, and they're putting clown music behind it. So they're obviously trying to influence your opinion of what the footage is.
So talking about
I think clown music should be over everything.
Everything. Just put it over everything. And
everything
we'll all
for the last 40 years, maybe.
So
maybe longer.
So when did I don't believe that the lunar rover came out in the first Apollo mission.
No, it was Apollos 15, 16, and 17 had
so
rovers.
I might also be wrong, but we can watch this video and then we can dive into it. But I didn't think that the actual rover was supposedly directing to Earth. I thought the rover was still connected to the lunar lander, which was then connected to Earth.
So the lunar lander also has an antenna, and on the first few missions, that was the antenna that was broadcasting. So they had a cable that would come off of the LEM onto a camera, so it was hooked directly to the camera, and then they would set the camera in one place and they could shoot. So once they got the rover, though, they did put an antenna that's on the rover, and that one could broadcast as well. Now the difference is they don't ever broadcast from the rover while it's moving, because you would lose signal immediately.
Right.
Because it's obvious it's going to be bouncing and shaking as the rover is driving. So there's no footage of the rover driving where they're using a broadcast antenna. Now there is footage of the rover driving.
Yes.
But they also had equipped on the rovers, they had 16 millimeter cameras with a short period of film that they could film with.
So I think
that's super interesting because.
Oh, go for it.
Well, I mean, just because that film would have to be unwound up, and would have to have been unrolled out, and that's really interesting.
Right.
And
they don't,
plus
they don't,
200
they
degree
don't carry much,
and minus 200 degree.
Right, but they had still film cameras that were the same. That they just packaged them.
No, so the still film cameras, they made each frame was its own contained unit. But still, the mechanics also still wouldn't work, though, and plus 200, minus 200.
They have like a similar magazine that loads into the 16 millimeter camera. So the only time you see moving rover footage is through a 16 millimeter
but it's not
camera that they're filming there.
They can't switch out single plates to create, to film motion. It's going to be unwinding film somewhere. It's going to be a roll of film.
I see what you're saying.
Right.
Well, okay, so
that doesn't make sense.
That's another piece. That's another theory. Let's stay on the camera, like actually filming it all in the reception, right? So, Mike, I think you have queued up or something queued up you wanted to actually show of antenna reception.
Which, I mean, unfortunately, we're going to be watching a short clip instead of watch.
I mean,
the big
go to
proof
the
to me is when you watch a lot of the footage, and so you see it in context, and you're like, oh, whatever. So, unfortunately, we're going to show a short clip, but we'll show it kind of sitting there, and then, you can see some of the shaking here. But also, one of the times that they show in the documentary the camera shaking, it's actually an astronaut is working on the camera, so he's actually physically moving the camera. So that's another one of the shakes for the Apollo 17 footage.
Well, let's watch this, and then we can always go to American Moon after. Let's always show both sides right here.
We should definitely see that.
100%.
We should
we'll
see
do
that
both
first, really. But okay,
we're starting with the shake.
Well, I think let's watch the broadcast of what is perceived as truth.
What NASA
says, and then we'll see
a selection, right? It's like we're only on like Apollo 17,
one could argue the selection is the same for American Moon too.
Which
they have more.
I would recommend to everybody watch a ton of this moon footage. You'll be bored out of your mind, but it actually it does put it into perspective for you.
Okay, let's go.
So what do we got? Apollo 17 lunar rover.
Okay, so this is the camera's panning right here, and actually some of the shaky footage is part of what I wanted to show too. Like if you see how far away from the camera that guy is, like even just that is pretty incredible. So you've got this guy who's got to be on wires to do that if they're on Earth, but he's way far out there.
Why has he got to be on wires to do what?
To be hopping around like that. And so see this halo that's coming up here? This is actually an astronaut who's working on the camera at the time.
Like a glove, you're saying?
Yeah, so you're seeing that little glow. It's because he's slightly in front of the lens of the camera. But also the other piece to me is just like, look at how far out this guy is.
I mean,
it's a massive
every
shot.
time we talk about how far the Earth looks or whatever, it's all about lenses and stuff like that. I mean,
I know, but he zooms out. The camera zooms out and zooms in. So like you could tell they're way.
So is this the shaking part that you're talking about in reference to?
There are sections of American Moon that talk about how you can produce this type of illusion of depth.
Yeah, so it is a violent amount of shaking, but it doesn't seem. I don't know. And when I watched it in the documentary, it seemed like it was way more violent.
So, but
this is also an astronaut working on the camera.
To Brad's point, though, you certainly could
force perspective
is what you're referring and make this fake. So I mean, this in a nutshell doesn't.
So there's some other shots that we'll look at where you'll see like an incredible depth of field, and then also how tall the mountains would have to be next to him.
Okay.
I mean, it's still an
so you see, this is the actual astronaut flip the camera around like that because it doesn't pan that quickly when NASA's moving it.
So in reference to, is the antenna completely independent from the camera itself, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a whole separate unit, and it's connected by a cable,
and it's tethered
to the rover in a different location.
So therefore, it wouldn't necessarily, the camera movement wouldn't necessarily have any effect on the reception whatsoever.
And in this case, it's actually an astronaut with his hands on the camera, physically moving the camera because he's replacing a battery magazine on it.
Okay, so then let's go to the American Moon documentary where they actually talk about it.
All right.
Okay, I think. Let's see. I think
I forget where, but it's somewhere near the middle. Yeah.
145.50, I think.
Or maybe even 143. Hour 43.
Hour 43. Okay, yeah, you were thinking a minute. Sorry, buddy.
I'm pretty sure that's
it's 3 hours.
Right about where it was.
3.5 hours.
I see some.
Somehow they managed 3.5 hours of debunking.
That's how I was able to match the footage. I had to look for like something in the landscape that was the same.
So you want me to go directly to where we were before?
Oh, actually, it talks about the.
Or do we want to talk about?
It talks about the diagram.
All right, let's.
So that talks about the broadcast.
Let's play from here. All right, that's good.
This may kill our ears or not. I don't know.
Actually, let me
Strap
just turn
in,
it
kids.
down a little bit. All right, here we go.
Pointing by using an optical device mounted directly on the antenna.
Can you pause it really quickly? Can I just say, after this, if I ever have to hear whoever it is that's talking on this one, I'm going to bludgeon my eyes out. I hate this guy's voice so much. Go ahead.
Training manual, we read, bore sighting the high-gain antenna to the Earth requires an optical aid, since a full Earth subtends an angle of less than 2 degrees when viewed from the lunar surface. This is the aiming reticle from the optical device. Each square represents an angle of 3 degrees. The high-gain antenna pointing, states NASA, must remain within 2.5 degrees.
I also found an article
that
says this is not true.
When the Earth's image is within the bullseye of the optical site. The video signal will degrade extremely rapidly beyond that point due to the very narrow antenna radiation pattern. In other words, even a misalignment of a couple of degrees in pointing the antenna would have resulted in the Earth target being missed. we must keep in mind that both the
Pause it really
TV
quickly for me.
camera and the transmitting
Back it up just a touch. I'm just really curious about one thing on here. If you go back a little bit, they reference an actual NASA PDF document. Can you still go to that?
Yeah, you can. There
you
is
go to
a
the URL?
URL for it, but NASA moved the subdomain, so it's actually history.nasa, but the rest of the URL is the
Talking
same.
about this.
No, go back a little bit. There's
And there's
actually
a-
like a URL. Forward. They actually reference.
or sighting the high gain antenna.
Yeah, here we
to
go,
the
that.
Earth require-
Can we try to go to that?
So instead of HQ, you want to do history.nasa.gov, and then the rest of it works.
Okay.
This is the most boring research ever.
Yeah.
So
Try
basically,
watching just moon footage for hours.
so basically, what they're trying
Now
to
I'm
say.
going to search for something on the internet.
So basically, what they're trying to say is that directly from a NASA document, the American Moon documentary is saying that from a NASA document, they're claiming that based on the degrees of angle from the surface of the moon to the Earth, because it's so far away, you have a 2-degree angle to be within Earth's pattern of signal.
Correct. So, but the argument that they make further is that they show, they show that the camera's shaking, so they say camera shake equals antenna shake.
Right.
Therefore, you'd be out of the 2 degrees.
Right, okay.
But we just watched camera shake, and it was actually a person moving the camera, so that doesn't equal camera shake.
Okay, so here's the actual document: Crew Training Manual, Lunar Communications Relay. So there is 71 pages to this.
You can do a search for Bohr sighting.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
a pretty special word.
Well, I don't know. This looks like just images of a PDF. So, like, I don't know if it's actual
It'll
text.
do it,
BORE?
BORE. Yeah, Bohr sighting is something else. That's Russia hoax.
Here we go.
Nice.
The antenna gain is nominally 10 dB on Bohr sight.
Bohr sighting. So there's probably another one.
Sighting.
Yeah.
Bohr sighting, the HDA to the
Yeah.
Earth requires an
Okay.
optical aid since a full Earth subtends an angle of less than 2 degrees when viewed from the lunar surface. Figure 4.8 shows the position of the optical sight for 3 antenna orientations. A close-up view of the sight is shown in figure 4.9. So the sight contains an objective lens, mirrors, and ground glass viewing. A calibrated reticle is visible at the viewing screen for centering the Earth's image. A sector
Calibrated
mass
testicles.
sector mass must be rotate. The mask is not required. Blah 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 blah. Can you scroll down a little bit more? A little more. Let's go to the next page. Okay. The reticle provides a nominal 18-degree viewing angle as seen in figure 410. Each scale on this reticle represents 3 degrees. The bullseye circle represents 3 degrees of viewing angle. When an Earth image is centered in the bullseye, the antenna is essentially Bohr-sighted. Typically, appearance of reticle sector mass combinations are shown. So I guess what I'm not understanding is I don't understand.
Well, it does state in here that they're saying the view that you have is only a 2-degree view to get sighted in.
Yeah.
It's that the circumference of the full Earth is only within a 2 degree,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
once you're out of it, you're aiming for Alpha Centauri, right? The moon, for comparison, the moon from our view is a half a degree. So if we're aiming to communicate with the moon, we only have a half a degree.
Right. But is it saying that it's such a directed signal that if you're even here we go. Here's the actual graph that they show. Go one more down.
Yeah, so it's basically like the footage will start deteriorating really quickly. Like you won't have good signal.
Yeah.
Which you could actually see also when the camera was shaking a lot. There was some degradation in signal. Like you could see like little lines coming up.
So is
But-
the assumption that it's going to be so far off that there's not going to be any signal at all? Is
Right.
that-
So
is that
the
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 assumption?
context of the question is like this. Let's see.
What? Yeah. So that way we can.
Well, so the
I mean, if you scoot over on that,
Yeah.
scoot forward on this, you can see the footage, and they actually have the question with a good context for it because if
Yeah.
you compare it to like satellite broadcasts
Here we
from
go.
There
Earth.
we go. All right.
So where there's actual
still
footage.
for the
Yep.
entire duration of the broadcast. What we have instead is a series of situations in which the
This
astronauts
is where the
violently
bullshit
shake the
starts.
rover, thus also the antenna, without the broadcast ever breaking down.
So do you notice he said also the antenna?
This usually happens when one of the astronauts touches the rover
Pause
to
it.
drop or retrieve some tool.
So this is a camera from the rover. Somebody's working on the rover, and the rover is shaking.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
so
but they equate that anytime a camera shake happens, that it's also an antenna shake.
Where's the antenna on the rover?
It's right next to the camera.
It's separated.
It's in the same
There's a camera here, and
It's
then
on the-
it's
it's on the
basically like
same
maybe
frame
a
bar.
foot or
It's on
two.
the
Let me go.
same
Let me go.
frame.
Let me go
Yeah, it's
back
on
to.
the same
Let me go back
bar.
to the image.
Which
But
Apollo mission or is American
this
Moon
one's
referencing?
All
They,
of
they
them.
show
I don't know
footage
which-
there you
from
go.
15, 16,
so
and
there
17.
you go. That's the
So it is attached.
yeah.
So can you confirm this? Apollo 17, the rover. I still thought
But
the
it's
rover
not.
was
It's
going
not
to
directly attached. So the camera is not.
looks
Like the
directly
camera's
attached.
not on. This
Let
is
me
the. That's supposed to be the. I believe the reticle, right? To
No, that's
aim
the
it?
camera.
Or is that the reticle up there?
I believe that's
That's
the
the
reticle.
reticle to aim.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
And
on a
this is the
stand on its
camera.
own, and the camera's on a stand on its own. But the camera can pan and move independently.
Those aren't attached to the rover?
It's attached
Yeah,
to the rover,
they're right
but
here.
I'm
They're on
saying
the
that
same part of
the
the frame.
camera itself can actually move up, down, and in a circle.
It's independent.
So
of
it's independent
movement.
of the rover. It can turn and move.
Oh, okay.
on
Nope,
its
nope.
own.
They share the same frame. Same
They show
base.
the same
Yeah.
frame, but there's completely different system.
Yeah.
Though.
So there's the context is that
Go
on
to the
Earth, if
Apollo
we want to
17
broadcast
rover.
via satellite, we have to stabilize the vans.
Right, which is
They-
why they state they don't ever move the rover while they're using the broadcast camera.
No, they stabilize the vans with they have arms that come out to stabilize the vans,
There's the
so that
camera.
any shake would
Yeah.
have distorted the picture.
Yeah, so there's a lot of times where the camera is separated and set in the midst of the rover.
I mean, it looks attached. But what I'm not seeing is, like what you're saying. Like, did they?
There's your guy, man.
Yeah,
How old is that guy?
see, look, he's on the moon
It's
right
pretty
there.
funny. It's pretty funny when you look at it from the outside.
I mean,
He
that's
looks,
just a,
he looks funny without
Oh.
without a suit.
Yeah,
go up a little bit. Go to the New York Times image. I'm just
What, this one?
No, the one next to it, to the left of it.
This
Not
one?
that one. Yeah. Yeah. So it's attached. So somebody took a photo of it. Just I don't know, chilling out, hanging, pointing.
Yeah.
I mean, that looks attached. I'm
And there's nothing here.
yeah. So it's
So this
it can
this is a
sit
Jeep
independent.
Willys.
It can sit
This is the
independently
same
of it.
exact dimensions
Because
as
you
Jeep
actually
Willys,
see
FYI.
shots of the camera turning, and you could see the antenna
Mhm.
from the camera, so it's not so close that it.
What about this, guys? This looks
it's
like
gonna
this.
hit it.
This is convincing me right here. It wasn't
Yeah.
real at all.
Yeah, so they have a front
There we go.
mount, but they
Right
also
there.
have a mount in the center.
So they can remove the camera and place it where they need be
Right.
for whatever purpose.
Exactly.
Get a different.
So it's
angle.
not always necessarily like right on the antenna.
Is there a shot of the camera and the antenna separate from the rover? Like, did someone take a picture of them actually doing that?
Well, the antenna
not aware of that.
antenna stays on the rover, but they can move the camera to different positions on the rover
Interesting.
because they're only connected by cables. They're not actually like part of the same unit.
I mean, look, I'm going to be honest. I'm not smart enough to read that NASA document and actually understand
I'm not
100% what they're saying. It's big words, and I feel like it's not giving me an answer to anything.
big words.
I mean,
Big
they-
words.
It's explained.
But
I
go-
mean, it's you
go
have
to-
to keep the Earth within the 2 degrees.
Go
That's
go
it.
to it again. Go to the NASA
If you're
document.
outside the 2
Oh, the
degrees,
NASA document.
you're aiming
it's-
to the back of the solar system.
Hey, Brad, don't you think it's interesting that it's 3 degrees?
Two.
Three.
Yeah, I know.
Three,
that would be
three.
cool. Yeah, all right. The Earth is only within 33
well,
degrees.
the reticle portion that they're talking about is like 3 degrees. Like 3
No,
degrees.
they have
Yeah.
the there's like a graph on the
Yeah, it's got a circle with the Earth
and
and
it
it
has
has 3 degrees
degree
on the other
increments.
side.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So go back to the board.
but I mean,
site
yeah, but the
language.
Earth has to stay within 2 degrees. so
three,
that's just-
3, 3.
yeah.
There it is, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There
they always
it
got
is.
it. They always got to encode it.
Interesting. I
Those
mean,
Masons.
these are just boring black
So
and white
anyway,
images.
I did see another article that said that they actually would have had a radius of, or not a radius, but they would have had
Let's-
9
let's do
degrees
this.
because it would have they were broadcasting their signal at such a strong way that
I mean, they
the
actually
antenna actually would have been able to receive it. At
all
a
of that's
larger-
in the American Moon. They actually the whole. It's all explained in the American Moon. If you watch the whole segment, they
But-
talk about the game.
But really, what
and all that
happens
stuff.
is, but the thing that they kind of bullshit on is that they show the rover moving and assume
we
that-
haven't seen it.
Let's
yeah,
go
we,
back.
we
we'll
can
get
go
to
back
it.
to that clip real quick. So,
Here with the.
but in here they
clown
they
music.
show the rover moving
Beware.
as
Plug
part of
your
the
ears,
footage
young
that
boys.
like couldn't like how could it have withstand this? Look, the rover's moving. Well, they never shot with a broadcast camera while the rover's
So
moving.
I think that's something, a distinction between, I think a lot of people aren't completely aware of, is their, I guess with new technology and whatnot, everyone has a camera on their phone.
Mhm.
Video, the difference between video and film. So
Right.
video is this signal here, which was how they were able to get it in real time and everything like that, and obviously the difference between with footage with
Allegedly.
actual film. Yes, allegedly.
Thank you.
With the film.
I got you, Brad.
With film, which you can see, like you said, they go to a 16 millimeter camera to film with actual footage for X amount of time.
Right.
Which I can understand your point of view.
I thought I had seen it moving while it was broadcasting, but when I looked back at it, I was like, well, wait a minute. So let's talk about the film then, because that's definitely a big portion of it too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is that they were saying that photographic
there,
film wouldn't make it.
Is there a
and
NASA
the mechanics,
like
the gears wouldn't make it. They'd expand and shrink.
What is the
not unless it's like in a protective
what is the what is the temperature limit? You said
it's plus 200 in the sun, minus 200 in the shadow.
I mean, we could validate that.
Yeah,
what is the temperature of the moon? Is it that big of a span?
It is. I mean, you're getting direct sunlight.
Yeah, I mean, there's no atmosphere. Daytime temperatures near the lunar equator reach a boiling 250 degrees Fahrenheit, while nighttime temperatures get to a chilly negative 208. So it's actually a bigger.
Wow.
It's actually a bigger range than you mentioned. Poles are even colder. Interesting. Fair enough.
So I don't know how that film would have worked. But.
Oh, look into.
Well, okay. So let's see. So
that's
back to
we'll
American Moon.
Maybe link something in later about the film.
So American Moon. So we're back to filming from the rover itself, and they're breaking down the fact that the camera's shaking. Yeah. Okay. So let's play it a little bit more.
Tools. In order to assess the actual oscillations, one needs to look at how much the line of the horizon in the background moves up and down.
So again, they're leading you, telling you, oh, if this means the antenna's moving, not necessarily.
Well, let's just. I know I remember this part now too. So I'll.
Wow.
Being equipped with very soft suspensions, the rover shakes quite visibly.
Now
as
this
soon
one
as
here,
anyone
I
touches
found
it.
that video
Yet,
too,
as we have said,
and that video actually does cut the signal out when he jumps on it.
Why am I watching it and it's not cut?
Because it doesn't cut out right that second, but he jumps on it and it shakes enough to where it like actually takes the camera out for a second.
But wouldn't the parts that shake be the parts that cut out?
It has to shake enough to put the antenna out of. It has to shake enough to get the signal to break. So him jumping on the rover and getting it to shake.
Pretty significant.
Right, it doesn't mean that it shakes. All they ever actually say is that the signal will start degrading.
Okay, so let's break down what you're saying. So
it's not degrading.
So back up a little bit, and let's.
Unfortunately, I don't have like a time mark spot, but if you go watch the EVA footage from Apollo 16, you could see him take that camera out.
Okay, so let's pause it right here. So we're making.
But even that doesn't to me look that bad when you take the clown music off of it.
Okay, so we're making two arguments here. So basically, or an argument about this in particular. So on one side, there is a lot of shake going on. So in theory, it should cut out. There are some like striping and
it
stuff
cuts
happening.
too. It cuts too. Like,
what do you mean cuts?
There's a cut right there.
Right there.
It jumps. To, okay, so let's.
On the actual footage, you actually see like a blue screen come up, and it's like
there's a cut in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An actual
okay,
cut.
so let's break that down then. So if it does cut out from all this shaking, why would, if it's not real, why would they jump footage?
Two different types of shake. One is camera movement shaking. Another one is somebody physically jumping on the rover and moving the entire rover.
Well, because the antenna's large. The antenna's large and sitting on an arm, right?
But
that was the same one that he showed us.
Yeah, so this is the same one that I just showed.
So that's not from the rover.
I almost thought they
overshook
overshook it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of.
We just watched that, so that's not really from the rover. That's right near the lander, and it's an actual. Yeah, so here's the actual footage.
That's the one that we just watched. Yeah. Oh, okay, you're back there. But I matched it up to the footage they had in the documentary because I wanted to see the shakes.
So this is another astronaut is moving the camera.
Yes.
Not the rover moving.
Oh, but you're saying his hands are on the camera or something.
Yeah. And he actually mentions that. So he mentions that he's working on the camera.
This is not NASA moving the camera.
No, this is the actual astronaut.
Yes, because that's that little halo you see there is the astronaut right next to the camera.
Yeah, so it's moving a lot because someone's grabbing it.
Right?
Yeah.
They're grabbing the actual camera.
But I don't know. It looks more violent on the
because you have the arrow pointing, so it makes it look like, oh man.
Well, yeah,
you have something still. It's going to make it look more violent.
It doesn't make it look more. It actually helps you register it, right? So like when you're doing a pirouette, you're taught to focus against the far wall and maintain that focus, right? So it's the same concept.
But this is a person moving the camera, not the antenna and the camera.
Yeah, right. I agree with that completely.
Yeah, it could be, yeah. Yeah, but the other part where he just jumps on first of all, that's just a Willys.
Doesn't that look like blurrier? I don't know.
Seems like some
the Lunar
research.
Rover is just a stripped down Willys. It's the same exact dimensions, and the guy jumps on it and it moves, and so
I think I have this one too. I've got that one timed out somewhere.
Is
that's
this
the
from
camera, not the antenna.
Yeah.
Is that from the Lunar Rover?
Oh, I've got this one. This one I've got.
Again, is that somebody working on it, or is that the Lunar Rover?
That's at the rover. Somebody's at the rover, and this guy's out there
Messing with
it.
the camera.
I don't not this time. He's actually working on the rover, so he may be close enough to the camera that he's bumping the camera. But see, this
I don't
this
think
is
that's
I don't
not
equate
accurate.
this with that.
That's not accurate.
Well, I mean, that's
some crazy mathematical equations they're doing.
Just in the sense of like
it's an illustration.
No,
of
I know.
course, yeah, but
but meaning in the sense of what they're trying to convey. I don't think it's
but we're
an
not
accurate
seeing
thing.
any distortion at all. Like, okay, so
Right.
like you got to compare to
Unless
Earth.
But
you got to
but
compare.
it's the antenna that
like,
would cause the distortion.
Anytime you
not the
watch
camera itself.
SpaceX try to like land one of its rockets on the
launch pad.
Like
Like
the one in
reland
the
it.
ocean,
Yeah.
or even on ground too. For some reason, every time it's about to land, signal cuts out, and everybody's watching. It's, oh, and then it comes back, and it's like, oh, it landed.
on which one?
SpaceX. All these landings for
Oh.
SpaceX. It's like they're constantly cutting out.
Well, that actually is something that's crazy about the moon footage. Is you can get footage of them disconnecting the LEM from the orbital ship, and they've got film all the way to the ground in single shot, which is another shot that would be completely impossible for them to shoot.
It's so then like again that's assume so then giant robots can transform out of like semis, and Spider-Man can save the day because
when you
saw
have
that.
CGI,
I also saw
not
that.
when you don't have CGI.
Yeah, so this is the footage you're referencing. Cameras cut when it goes to land.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the disappointing things I found in the Apollo 17 footage, because they have takeoff footage where they take off to go back to the ship, and just before the end of like this really long shot that you've been watching for 3 hours, it cuts and then it shows the camera cuts and then it shows the takeoff.
Interesting.
So because I was like, come on, man, I need some smoke and gun footage of like 3 hours of them walking around in this huge place,
right,
and then walking into the rover and then it taking off. Like.
And then it cuts. Suspicious.
Yeah. But they do show at because they had to set the camera at a long distance on Apollo 17 because they'd already screwed up the last two when they were trying to get the shot of the takeoff. And so during that time, they set the camera way back, and you could see the astronauts and like their relative size to the lander, and then it cuts, and then they show the takeoff. But
So go back to American Moon and just go to the question posing. It's like just after that part. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and then in this footage, too, they'll show moving rover footage, which
The
wouldn't have happened.
oscillations of the antenna must have looked something like this.
Okay.
Question.
Oh,
On
there we go.
Earth, transmitting vehicles are normally equipped with stabilizing pods in order to keep them from shaking during the broadcast. Why?
Pause it. Now I'm going to pose a thought, and we can look this up. Here's my thought. They do the exact same thing for mobile generators because it's a large, heavy vehicle that could roll away and kill somebody. What if it's just stabilized because it's a very large, heavy vehicle, not because of satellite? We can look that up.
That has wheels on it.
That has. All I'm saying is we can validate that. So
and also I don't know. So the rover was meant to be as light as possible.
Yes.
So and then there's
that
also
doesn't look that large.
not nearly as much gravity on.
Well, neither does the scissor lift we have just around the other side
There's
of the
not
door. But
nearly
it weighs
as
more
much
than your
gravity
car.
on the moon, so it's technically not as heavy.
Sure.
And who's going to move it? There's only two guys there.
Well, but the point I'm making
it moves
is
quite a bit.
The
When
point
that guy jumps in, it
for
moves
sure
quite a bit.
Right.
But that's kind of the shocks of it, right?
Yeah.
You jump on it and then, which actually he wouldn't have been that very, very heavy on there either. But
it still moves.
Supports, stoppers.
But it
Ground
still
mounts. I don't know.
Yeah, that's half of the problem is knowing what the hell to search.
I mean, yeah, these are going to be satellite trucks as a module. Yeah, these are not going to help us. Static ground system for tank trucks. I don't think any of this is right.
Well, and ultimately, I don't think it's. I don't know. I think there's enough to. If you've made your decision, you've made your decision on that.
Well,
on
okay,
that point.
okay.
But
So hang on, back up a little bit. Let's consider what they're actually posing. So the picture that they show is of the towable type deal. News vans just park and they broadcast live. Do they have mounts?
Nope. They have a parking brake.
Look up news trucks because it'd be the same thing, right? They're broadcasting live. So like a news van just parks. They don't have to support themselves, right? Am I wrong? I don't remember ever seeing it's the same thing. Would we argue?
So I think
that one just has stairs into the back. That one's not.
Well, that one ain't moving.
That one, okay, that's just a van. That's just a truck. Yeah, I'm not seeing.
Big ass satellite on that guy.
Yeah, it is. I'm not seeing any stabilization required. So here's my challenge, and here's my challenge with this theory in general.
Well,
there may be some.
There might be stabilization underneath. Like you
I think we got it right here, guys.
Solved it.
So no. The question isn't.
Oh, here we go. There it is. Click on that one. I don't see anything mounting.
The question
to the
isn't
ground.
that one should be like the other. The question is that one is a magnification of the other.
Sure.
So it should have even more stabilization. It should have even less give.
Well,
less.
what I'm saying is it doesn't look like any of these have any. So what's more from zero?
Anything?
Well, here's
Or
the challenge I'm having with this argument, especially the way American Moon is presenting it, one way or the other. The challenge I'm having is we've already found the actual footage from Apollo 17 and the way American Moon presents it, where they're inferring that the video that they're showing you is from the lunar rover bouncing around, and we've already validated that one of them is actually an astronaut moving the camera around. So I have a problem with one of the arguments they're presenting, and now I want to go validate every single piece of that.
Right.
Because
that
now
was
I'm
my
curious.
problem even after last time, and then especially when I found this too, was
This is
because
just a bad
last time we
argument.
were talking about the flag coming into the frame, and then you could see that they distorted the footage. So to me, it's that they don't care whether it's true or not. They just care about making this point in this documentary.
So we're getting into this no true Scotsman fallacy because we're saying they doctored the footage now.
I'm saying
now
that,
I'm
saying they're liars.
Yeah, you're saying right. You're saying that I exclude your sources because they aren't my sources, right? And
If the sources
you'll
are
never really come to a good
I'm-
logical conclusion with those types of fallacies.
I still went through and found information to debunk just about everything they say in that documentary, if not everything they say in the
let's
documentary.
not talk generalities. Let's talk about the
the
specific
funny
ones.
thing
Specific-
about it, though,
specific
is that
ones.
the real sources for
Yeah.
American Moon are the
Yeah,
NASA
100%.
official DVDs.
Let's talk about that. So, Brad, let's make this argument.
Okay.
In American Moon, we just watched footage where they're claiming that the footage is the lunar rover bouncing around that should cause degradation in film.
Yes.
We can agree to that.
Well, and they say that every
Video.
shake of the camera
Degradation.
equals
Not
a
even
shake.
that. Not even that.
They do say that.
100%,
Video.
but let's not even agree to that.
Degradation of video.
Degradation of video.
Let's not get confused.
Let's
two different things.
Okay, so degradation of video. So let's stay on that. So we watched one of the pieces of clip, and they said they infer. They don't say it directly. They say if the lunar rover would bounce around, then
No, they say specifically. They say every shake of the camera equals
100%.
a shake of the.
And then they show
antenna.
shaking video footage, which would infer that all of the video they're showing should be the camera from the lunar rover. Yes. I'm not jumping ahead. Yeah, we're all agreeing to that.
Yeah, it should be
100%.
Yeah.
Then when we watch the Apollo 17 actual footage and we watch the exact same clip, watched the rest of the way, we can see that it's actually an astronaut playing with the camera and then turning it, not on the lunar camera moving. It's not on the lunar rover moving. It's the camera moving. So the challenge is we're going to the source footage that American Moon mentioned and just playing more of the beginning of the end and finding that the way they inferred that we're watching lunar rover footage is not actually what we're watching.
Yeah, that's fair because that could totally have been the astronaut manipulating the camera. So you can't exclude
100%.
the astronaut from that.
That's the only argument I'm trying to make to make sure we're on the same page there.
Definitely
Sure.
that clip weakens their argument because they included it in the group.
Okay.
But
we're making common ground here.
But there is a group.
100%.
And again, like the claim is being made that they went to the moon. So that
I
burden of
understand.
proof is that they went to the moon. So
Yeah, I still disagree with
Well,
that.
we're going to get to
But-
that. We're going to get to that later.
so if you have the astronaut jumping onto the Jeep Willys and it's shaking plenty and it's not distorting, it's not having any problems, then
Well,
that,
the
that's
thing is,
enough.
though, if you shake a camera, your video footage is going to be distorted because it's shaking around. I mean, if you're moving it fast, it's going to get blurry, so it's already degrading just moving a camera.
No, transmission degrades.
Right.
So,
but what does that mean?
So
does
like,
that mean the picture gets worse?
Well, it
because
means
the
it
picture gets worse
it would
when you
probably
shake the
be
camera
like
no matter what.
when you have the footage from the landing pad on a SpaceX.
I know.
Where it just cuts out.
Which I guess is something that I was trying to look for in that.
Yeah, which we
Maybe
did
it's
see
like
that. We saw the edit
ocean
in the
landing
footage.
or something like that, because I know they have like a floating pad.
Right. Yeah, they've done the floating pad a few
And
times.
I didn't get the like I saw the 16 footage like in its regular context, but I didn't timestamp it.
Yeah, they always cut to this.
Because this is a way more interesting shot than watching the floor get close.
I like to see the shot that he's talking about.
I mean, I've definitely
seen. They still clip before it lands.
Do like a ocean landing or ocean barge?
Yeah, it is a barge. You're right. Good call, Dave.
Yeah,
look at the big brains on Dave.
Let's watch it exploding. Yeah.
Oh yeah, always good watching Elon lose billions. Falls over then explodes. This is just going to be only that clip.
There it is.
Man, comes in quick, doesn't it?
And then it gives up.
And there's $1 billion.
What is that?
Yeah.
That it.
It's going limp.
Boom. And it
That's
blew
an
up.
awesome explosion, though. I want to watch that again.
But no.
Okay.
But no camera clip of it actually cutting. But I definitely know.
All right, let's hear it explode.
Oh, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just the kid.
Music to my ears.
Yeah, here we go.
Nice.
Yeah, that's no joke, man. That's a good explosion.
Can we get a compilation of those?
And just a
over
sad
on a loop.
and a sad face of Elon Musk. Just
He doesn't care.
I know.
Dude's printing money.
Okay, so we found some common ground of potential for the camera shaking, where they made maybe one of the videos that they used in their argument.
Well, we can
seems
continue
like
because they also do show moving rover footage as the EVA footage, the broadcast footage.
Perfect. So
which also is.
Is it further in America? Is it past this?
It's almost the same part. It's
Okay.
It's part of like the little compilation of videos.
Oh, okay. So if we go back a little bit, we should see it. Did we just we gloss over it?
Yeah, we might have. Where's the like set of clips that they show?
I think we're on
Vision
it.
broadcasts from the moon.
We're not there yet because we don't hear the
first
funny
three
music.
Yeah, the clown
missions,
music hasn't
Apollo
started yet.
11, 12, and 14 had sent some rather poor TV pictures back to Earth.
Sorry.
But beginning with Apollo 15, vision pointing by using
Yeah.
an
Yeah,
optical
so okay, a little ahead of this. Yeah, so in
being
part of
equipped
this, I'm
with very
pretty sure they
soft
show moving
suspensions,
rover
the
footage.
rover shakes
Okay,
like
and the camera clips, and then there's another video.
Yeah, and 16, when you watch that footage, because they actually move around quite a bit in 16. It shuts down every time between movements because they can't drive with it.
Okay, so we already watched the actual clip of this one. Yeah, hang on, pause this. Pause
It seems like it's sped up.
Go back to Apollo
It
17
seems like it's sped up.
and play the exact same clip again. I don't know.
It does shake quite a bit here.
Yeah, it looks
does.
about the
But
same.
I don't know, when it's in the documentary, it looks like so much more.
Okay, pause it and let's go back to American Moon. And back up a half sec and then play that again.
Damn it. Sorry.
It looks fuzzier. Anyways,
It's
carry
on the
on.
antenna.
It could just be,
Keep
I don't
going.
know.
Okay, here's the
it's
limb.
yeah, the
There's a dude
limb.
working.
Hold on.
Wow,
now I'm not
that
gonna.
was huge.
Now I'm not
I
gonna
have
lie.
that- I
That
have-
looks like a model
was-
to me.
Yeah.
That was huge, though. That last shake was
That looks like a
massive.
model to me.
That was like
Just
20
the way
degrees.
that the lighting is and stuff.
I know
is
it's
crazy.
But the thing is, though, when you see those shots and you're watching the full footage,
Yeah.
you'll see a guy walk up to it
Yeah.
and like.
But this argument is that
It's the
this
greatest
is
model ever
the
made.
lunar, the
limb, yeah.
the limb, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not driving. Okay. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah, something
Some
weird happened with the footage.
Dudes
That's pretty
working.
huge.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I have this one
That's massive.
too. I thought I timestamped it, but I think it's
Also,
towards the end of
Is the camera zoomed in?
A
or is this-
thing.
Oh wait, that's 16. No, I
A
got
thing
this
with
one.
this footage is.
I did watch
too-
the 16 one too, and it doesn't look as bad.
I think
as,
also something too is just degradation of footage and how many times it's
That's
been
actually
copied
a-
over and over again.
Yeah,
from
that's actually
sources.
a good one too. This one, which I think I got. Let's see, where's part one?
So we're still,
Like
we're still
39
here.
minutes. Yeah. Okay, we can start moving on. But basically, and people at home, they can go and watch all this footage. It's
Oh,
available on
look at that.
YouTube.
Why
you
aren't
can
there
see it,
any
and the American Moon
supports for
documentary.
that?
But that one of that guy carrying the two boxes out there that gets
Uh-huh.
really shaky. That one's interesting because that guy walks so far out with those things, so you actually see him like way far away from the camera.
So they
Yeah.
zoom in.
Yeah, I mean you can see how far he is there. He goes like almost like twice as far as that.
Yeah, I'm getting an issue. I have an issue with perspective on this too.
And it is rough, too, because you don't get any diffusion because there's no atmosphere. So normally if you look at a picture, when you see something far away, it starts getting hazier. Because that's because you have air. Here you have no air, so you have no diffusion on how far away things are. So you really have to see people, like, actually walk that far out.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, you had to have gone that far out because it took you, like, 5 minutes to walk there.
Interesting.
The only thing that's there is the air of lies.
Okay, so, yeah, I mean, I feel like I am nowhere closer to not believing the Apollo mission so far from this footage personally, just because I have challenges with the argument. But okay, so some of the other arguments they talk about faking the footage are like the wires are on astronauts,
right?
It's
In order
filmed in slow motion,
right? In order to get the astronauts to move like that, you'd have to have wires connected to them so they could do the hopping, because you can't just hop like that normally.
Right. Yeah. So something has to be going on for them to make those movements.
So if you film it, then you have to film it with wires, because that's the only way you get that effect.
Right.
Particularly at the time when this is being filmed, which is 69 to 73, like there's no CGI. So
right.
And there's no wire removal though, which is the other tough thing, because these guys get awfully close to the camera and then walk way out. Because a lot of that EVA footage goes on for like 12 hours.
Right.
And the camera rarely cuts because it's broadcasting. So you've got a single shot with guys who are supposed to be wearing wires, where they also do tilt-ups with the camera where you could see the Earth in the distance,
right?
Meaning another special effect. And you can't do it in slow motion because there's times where you can see them moving and it's not slow motion. And I believe at the time, you could only film for like 33 seconds in slow motion with any camera that existed at the time.
Interesting.
And this is a broadcast camera anyways.
Okay, so let's break those down. So Brad, do you have an argument for either of those?
The wires are actually in American Moon. I'm looking for a timestamp.
There was one where it looks like so they wear antennas on the back of their backpacks. So a lot of times you get glistening off of the antennas, which can appear like a wire.
So the argument is you could see the wire.
There is one.
No, you can
that's
see
weird.
it way above.
There's one that's weird where like you could see like the antenna flash, and then like way above it there's like another weird flash.
Interesting.
Could it be just refraction from?
Is it
light?
203.55?
It does look weird.
Or it gets like a weird because there's instances in photography or just video and stuff, you will have like this shimmering effect.
It does look the same as the shimmering that's on the antenna.
So it's probably just that.
203.
203.55.
Let's see. So we're gonna talk about the wires that they were wearing.
Yeah.
You
wearing a wire?
I'm not wearing a wire. 203.53.
55. I think we're right there. Ooh. Yep.
I'll just play from here.
Yeah,
Here's
so that's the antenna there.
Let's hear
actually, there's a lot of interesting movements
but you
here
can see
too.
it cuts off.
Question: given the sliding forward,
I mean, if you want to see the samples, you'd have to go before that. But
yeah, and again, out of context, when they show these little clips,
I love the
much
music.
different. Yeah.
And finally, here's a very curious situation. Look at the movement the astronaut manages to make with both his legs, first forward and then backwards, without leaning onto anything. It's as if his feet were free to slide, first forward and then backwards, on the ground underneath.
Which, who knows?
If we straighten
toes.
the frame in order to place
Can't see his feet.
okay, so now he's a toe
I don't
walker.
know.
He's on the
But
spectrum.
it's also 1/6 gravity, so the way they move is different.
Down is sliding forwards, then backwards. But how is it possible to slide with both feet at the same time, first forward and then backwards, without an external force pulling you upwards in the meantime?
You have a good
Question:
core.
Given that these are not
Maybe. They had to be in good shape, right?
You're only 1/6 the
nor
weight.
Are they glitters inside the lens? Can you explain what these flashes of light?
Go back one step to the actual argument that he's making.
Here.
Hit play. I want to get to the actual
so
argument. Pause. Okay. I just want to make this comment about this entire documentary because, Brad, I want you to know that I did watch it.
Oh, nice.
Here's the challenge that I have with this entire documentary.
The guy's voice?
Yes. And they present the question presumptively that you have to assume that the information they're giving in the question is correct. Here's what I mean. Given that these are not artifacts from video conversions, you have to assume that's correct, nor are they glares inside the lens. You have to assume that's correct. Now his question has validity to debunk.
Well, and then, like I said,
Well, I think
they
if you
lead
go
you
earlier
to
in that,
everything
they
as
talk
well.
about whether they would be or not,
But
right? So,
yes.
So the question isn't like 3 paragraphs long. They're just saying
Right.
we settled these premises earlier, so let's remind ourselves this is
Right.
our common ground.
You know, this is what watching the documentary felt like to me. Have you ever like somebody who like is kind of good at math can prove that 1 equals 0. Have you ever seen that argument before? Where you continue the logical argument down a path, accepting what the prior argument was until you get to 1 equals 0. Have you ever seen that before? That's a great one. Have you seen that before? Nope. You know what I'm talking about?
Nope.
I think it's 1 equals 0.
I saw that girl try to explain that 2 plus 2 was 5.
Yeah.
So basically what it is you use a bunch of mathematical logical arguments where the prior one is simple enough that you go, that makes sense, until you get to a fact that you realize that going down these logical arguments have made you accept that 1 equals 0. This is like a
well, basically
mathematical fallacy.
There's some fact or multiple facts in there that don't lead to the conclusion.
Something like that.
But you've allowed yourself to believe so many arguments that you get to an illogical conclusion.
Right. So maybe it's just the guy's voice, but something about the argument that gets presented in a lot of these pieces make me feel like I'm going through that fallacy where I'm accepting a small argument where I go, that seems valid to me. And then he makes another one and I go, that also seems valid to me. But then when he gets to the end one, I go, I don't know, how'd I get here? Now, some of it is maybe just me not accepting it.
Yeah.
I could make that. I could accept that. The other problem I have, though, is my bullshit meter is so high when this guy's talking that I just cannot let myself go, all right, this makes sense. There's a few in here where I go, that is weird. 100%. It's super weird. But my bullshit meter does not stop going off the whole time I'm watching this.
It's
just really hard for me to accept
that's
it.
like a special logical fallacy, the Kevin bullshit meter.
I agree completely.
You can't operate off of that.
I know, but the thing is also, that's when you watch the footage in full context, when you watch a lot of it like they're picking out these instances where anomalies happen, but 90% or 99% of the rest of it, you're like, this looks absolutely real.
You're complaining that it's a careful lie. I mean, like, if you're going to tell a story, you're going to try to be as good about it as you can.
Well,
try to cover all the bases
that's my other
you
argument. Because if I were going to create a lie of moon footage, I would never release 13 hours of straight shots that never cut. You would never see a wire.
That's actually no, like
you would never see
quantity
problems.
Over quality is a common sales tactic. It's not common. They'll look at all my great reviews and it's like all family or something like that.
But the reason they can dump it and not just give you but the reason they can just dump like that is because they weren't concerned with like, are people thinking this is fake?
That's not a reason to.
I'm just saying. It's not a logical argument. It's just in my brain. If I play how I would fake moon footage, I would never release huge amounts of it.
Yeah,
like
so
that.
you're trying to replace the conspiracy with your own conspiracy, and that's not the way to go about it.
No,
like
I'm just. I'm saying if I were not with my own.
What is reality?
But they're not acting like people who.
Okay.
It's not my only proof. I'm just saying it's another piece in my head of this is not how you fake
shit. We also talked about how 9/11 they found the passport on the cement right next to the building.
Right.
Right. This is not an uncommon thing.
That's more akin to looking at this one clip and being like, oh, they're on wires, instead of watching the 13 hours of other stuff where there's no wires visible and they do full 360 pan shots. Like, where are the wires even attached to?
I mean, you're getting very upset, but there's plenty
I'm not upset.
There's plenty here. I mean, let's just watch all of them.
I'm not mad. You're mad. Again, we're not here to convince anybody.
Yeah, there's plenty of footage here.
I just want to say, I can understand the argument for you, because I know we talked about this outside. Is just like the whole thing is, if one thing is amiss, then the whole thing is not real, because then or not real, or in the effect of
you have to question it all.
You have to question the whole thing into the can't even speak.
Validity.
Yeah, validity.
There
you go.
Hey,
words.
No.
But by the same token, then, couldn't we look at this documentary and say, well, we found 2 pretty clear lies in the documentary, so now isn't all of it bullshit?
Well,
but this isn't a claim, so you're doing like a game.
I'm doing the same thing that you're doing,
but this is not
backwards.
A claim. So when I deny
it's the same.
When I deny the moon landing, I don't gain anything by it.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Who benefits? NASA, $50 million a day budget.
When do you suppose they started filming this?
Huh?
When do you suppose they started filming?
Probably when they realized that they weren't going to get there, 1967 or something like that. That's what it says in the beginning of the movie.
Stanley Kubrick took about 4 years to make 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Well, it doesn't look Stanley Kubrick.
It doesn't look. I know it wasn't.
They used his
but
tactics.
it doesn't look nearly as good. And they did an amazing job considering they have no special effects people on their team.
His daughter said that if Stanley Kubrick did it, it would have looked a lot better.
Right.
But
actually, his footage doesn't look as good as that. Like, his actual shots are better, but his
special
special effects are not better.
So I forgot my point now. Where was I? Anyhow, so there's plenty of footage in here, and if you find one or two that you can't, go to sleep at night easily with, then you know that, like,
I don't
okay,
go to sleep at
all
night
right, well,
easily.
whatever, like that you can't settle your
That's
head
'cause I
on,
smoke crack.
right? then you know that the whole thing is got to be
Suspicious.
yeah, bullshit in some way or another.
Yeah.
Now, you could go and play the game of I'm going to replace the conspiracy with my conspiracy, and they really went to the moon, but they also wanted to create a segment of society that was disputing with it. So they laid in.
That's
these
not the
things.
conspiracy I'm
But
going with.
I'm just saying, like,
yeah.
you could go into all these different spin-outs,
mean,
right? But that's
yeah,
not
you
the
can-
purpose. The purpose is a claim was made. Do you accept it or not? That's all
Right.
it is. And who benefits by the claim? That's how you know who bears the burden of proof.
It's like the same thing in terms of like the invention of taxes. Do I accept it? I mean, I kind of have to, otherwise I go to jail or they kill me. But
Not
Okay,
necessarily.
so
yeah, they do.
So I like the argument.
necessarily.
I like
Bill
the argument
Cooper.
you're going with,
Bill Cooper, that's
Brad.
all I
So
gotta say.
so let's go down that argument. So who benefits from us accepting the moon landing was real? NASA, because they get a bigger budget.
Yeah.
That's
So-
the idea.
And then there's other questions about it, like, I don't remember what I was going to. Yeah, it wasn't really a space race because Russia had already fallen out of it by the time it was 1967. They had run out of budget. They didn't think they were going to get there.
Right.
And so then JFK made a speech and tried to invite Russia in. So the space race is over at that point, right? But not only that, but I think either right before or right after, the the head of the Russian space agency, he dies. And apparently he takes with him to the grave all of his mastery of they had like a different mode of transportation. They were using multiple rockets.
Right.
Whereas we focus on one big booster, right? So they had like a array of like 22 boosters. And, apparently the rocket, scientists just couldn't go without him.
That's
Apparently
not very
he had
Marxist
enough.
of him.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was. It was a very
Should've been
talent,
sharing.
merit-driven,
He probably
science
drove a
department.
slightly
Yeah,
nicer
pretty
car
wild.
too, that asshole.
But
Okay.
Traveled on
so
his
the
pig.
space race is over,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now all there is just, are they going to have egg on their face?
So I have
Yeah,
a question then. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. It was the same question.
So my argument then is like, in that particular case, would Russia have an argument to try to debunk America going to the moon? Why wouldn't they?
Yes, you would think, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that's what's so weird is when you start seeing like, okay, China going to the moon, and that was when I first started questioning all this, and like nobody's debunking it, and that it looked like bad video game footage. You got Japan going to the dark side of the moon.
Well, and
apparently.
with the China footage too, so they did two things when they went over. They did photos as they went over, and then they did scans where they were shooting like they basically had a laser that would hit the ground and
Right.
then come back, and they could get a topographical map.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if the CGI looking footage is actually CGI because they just had laser points
It's
to
Chinese.
do a
'cause it's in Chinese.
to do a topographical map.
Yeah, I mean they just
But I
and they
haven't-
do
I haven't
all
seen a
this,
lot of their footage,
like
so I don't
computer
know.
animation cuts and everything it was pretty blatant. So yeah, why do they? And then there's also things like we're supposedly in a Cold War, but right around the time that we start this space race, we also have like what was it, the Antarctic Treaty or something like that. So all these nations that are supposedly at odds with each other all agree to abide for like 70 years, like the longest running, broadest treaty ever, to never go to Antarctica, I guess.
So let's discuss that. Let's back up though to the Russian piece.
Okay.
So it would seem that Russia would have a vested interest in disproving the Americans going to the moon, especially if they're lying about it, because it would only make
So-
capitalism in America look worse, right?
Yeah, so
I would think.
you could
I don't
also
know.
it goes both ways though. Like if they also know that we faked it, then
Right.
that's also something they can hold, right?
As
So
in, like, we can hold this against you.
Yeah, it's basically we gave them compromat at that point, right?
Okay.
But like when presented with the offer, Khrushchev said, "Hey, I have no intention of going to the moon on a hastily planned mission. You guys go ahead and do your landing, or should I say mooning, haha." And then he says, "But we wish you all the greatest success, but it's a terribly dangerous mission."
Now, is that translated or is that actually what it
It's
said?
somewhere in there. Yeah, it's actually in American.
I mean,
yeah.
mooning
It's
just sounds like a
he does.
butt
Yeah,
joke
says
that he
it like-
snuck in.
Yeah, he says it like it's in the
those
beginning of
dad
this thing.
jokes.
Oh, you got to do a good dad
Yeah.
joke every once in a while, right?
So he basically is kind of calling the bluff effectively, and you know, I don't know if like JFK on the audio tapes, he does not sound like gung-ho about it, right? James Webb was the one who convinced JFK to go forward with the moon mission. And then James Webb actually quit NASA like 3 months before they landed on the moon.
I mean, maybe JFK knew his head was going to get blown off soon.
Maybe, yeah. Or maybe they...
Well, his head was blown
maybe
off
they
in
told him that
63,
they...
So
maybe they told him they named the lunar module after his boyfriend.
It's terrible. Yeah, so James Webb resigning NASA is very interesting. Webb was a Democrat tied closely to Johnson, and since Johnson chose not to run for re-election, Webb decided to step down as administrator to allow the next president, Republican Richard Nixon, to choose own
So he was still there all the way through
1981.
1968.
1968, just as Apollo was nearing a successful completion.
So that sounds like though Nixon picked his own guy, so they just...
It is weird. I agree. That's pretty
I don't know.
weird.
You just have
Why did
you have a
James
new
Webb
president in
resign
office.
just
It's
before
not that
Apollo
weird.
8?
Yeah.
Reddit, tell me. He talks
He was
about
tired.
He wanted to spend more time with his
He's
family.
been doing it for 7 years. That's exhausting. Have you ever done anything for 7 years? I don't think so.
Does this go to, what does this
Never
go
done
to?
rocket science.
Does this go to Wikipedia? I'm not gonna believe that. Okay,
It's
so
about blank.
that's strange for sure.
You know what's funny is I don't remember Kevin Costner. What did he play in that Hidden Figures movie? But like,
Kevin
yeah.
Costner.
yeah,
He played
it's like-
himself.
yeah, he played himself.
the only person he can
Dances with the Moon.
Yeah, Dances with the Moon.
Dances with the Moon.
Okay, so what other cross verification was there of the moon landing? So other people that claimed that it was real. So
Well,
I know
first the Russians were tracking the original Apollo 11 mission, all the
Right.
transmissions, tracking where the ship was.
there was also allegedly some independent satellite controllers that said that they actually picked up broadcasts of the communications between NASA and the astronauts on the moon. They allegedly used large satellites, pointed them at the moon, and actually heard them talking. Allegedly,
It's like it's all playground rules. Like if your buddy on the playground says, "Yeah, I have a girlfriend in Canada," well, you really can't do anything about it, right? Because it's in Canada. You don't have any spy satellite operations in Canada to prove that.
You don't know that.
But if you do hear his mom say that they went to Arizona over the summer, not Canada, now you can start calling bullshit, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So it's all playground rules. And if you have like, one of these things that makes no sense, like the dog ate my moon landing,
right?
that doesn't make sense. We didn't save any of the recordings of that. So I'm not going to accept that some radio guy caught original transmissions or something like that, maybe.
Yeah,
over
It's
the fact
possible.
that
It's possible,
I'm just
but
saying,
it's also
it doesn't.
who knows?
It doesn't overwhelm the fact
I
that
don't
the
know.
dog ate my moon landing. I'm just like, okay, well, this didn't happen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I just know that that's one argument that's made for cross verification. That there
Like
was
another one is that they always say, oh, we can shoot a laser at the moon, and there's reflectors,
mirrors.
right?
Right.
So the reflectors don't need men to be placed there on the moon. So maybe it's not a man landing on the moon, but also the moon itself has already been recorded to have reflected back from
Sure.
lasers before any
Right.
moon missions were launched.
Yeah, it has a naturally reflective surface anyways.
Yeah. Okay.
But also there were Japanese, Indian, Russian, and Chinese moon missions where they flew around the moon and they all confirmed all 6 sites for Apollo.
The Indian one is the most interesting to me. So I'm going to butcher this name, but whatever the Indian
Abba-dabba-dum.
exactly.
Ooh, okay, we just canceled this podcast.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Anyways.
In the corner with Hank Azaria.
Okay, so if you look up the Indian moon mission, number 2, not number 3, I'm again not going to try to say the name because unlike Mike, I care about my career. So just Google it because
Mission 3?
I don't. Yeah, it's mission 2. So number 3 is what's going on right now. Here it is. Chandrayaan. Oh
Where?
boy,
Where?
Chandrayaan. Look up Chandrayaan 2 photos.
Chandrayaan?
Well, see, that feels like it's very American.
Chandrayaan?
I don't know. We need somebody that knows.
Chandrayaan, maybe?
Okay. So if you look up number 2, they have actual, alleged footage and pictures of some of the Apollo mission landing sites. So YouTube, I didn't see it in here. Go into DuckDuckGo, Google, whatever, and actually look that up, and then look up Apollo missions.
They have video that claims to be viewing the
I'm,
actual,
yeah, again, I'm just saying
we're all appealing to authority or appealing to consensus.
I
here.
like my overlords. You settle down. They've done very good for me.
I only believe documentarians.
Okay, so there's, I don't know what this is. See, here's the problem. I just would like to say that India has a really bad PR department because they just don't get good footage out.
That's totally real. Look at that.
Look at that thing. Some kid. He's like 12. He's just coding his.
Oh, I remember that game. You got to land. You got to miss the crater.
So there's actually like
Nintendo 64.
I think it's on X, Dave. X, not Twitter. You know, because it's hip.
I don't know what you're referring to.
There's actual. Here we go. There we go. So there we go. It's on X. So here's an alleged photo taken from the Chandrayaan
Is this shot on a potato?
tune. Is it because they're Indian? Now it's getting worse. So
no, if they were Irish, I would have said it was
potato.
Chandrayaan.
Whatever. Anyways, these are alleged photos taken of the lunar surface from their lunar orbital mission, and this is allegedly Apollo 11 and Apollo 12 sites from the moon. You can believe it or not. Anyways, I find it very interesting.
Did they get any of 15 or 16?
I don't know. I didn't look deeper. I think they said they did, but these are like the most like, hey, look at the cool photo.
Because a lot of those you could still see like the tire tracks and stuff from the rovers.
Yeah, there's other photos you can see where people say like, oh, look, there's
oh
yeah, there it is, bottom
that can
corner.
Be dropped there.
Vikram lander there. There's another one where they say that this is another site.
Yeah, so those
those
look like tire tracks.
Yeah, it's a close-up of a 13-year-old's face.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. I mean, you should get that looked at. That's like MERS or something.
I mean, there's so many layers that, like, okay, obviously we're assuming that a video is real, right? But then also that stuff that's there could be dropped there. That
Video's
doesn't require a man
can't explain that.
Placed there. So, it doesn't do a whole lot.
Well, here's the good thing.
Burden of proof.
Here's what I'm going to say. The good thing is, after 2 hours of talking about this, no one's any closer to believing any other side. So this is good. But I mean, really, the big thing is we recommend, and I would absolutely agree with Brad, go watch American Moon. It is interesting, the arguments they make. Do all of your own research too. Yeah. 42 arguments. They make 42 arguments. But I just want to the last thing I want to mention, is the fallacy that I kind of talked about. So can you look up 1 = 0 for me? I just want to show you what I was talking about and the vibe that I got the whole time watching it. This doesn't mean it's right. You're absolutely right. My bullshit meter going off doesn't mean absolutely anything. But this is exactly where so here goes. Harvey Mudd College. I don't know where that is.
That's in it's in Pasadena.
I think it's in Jellystone National Park.
Okay. So here's the logical argument that I was talking about. So this is what I felt like when I was watching the American Moon documentary. I felt like the argument that it started with, X = Y, took me down simple logical paths where I could agree with the argument that was made before up to a point where I got to a fact that made me go, but I don't think I got here and I don't think I like it. X = Y, and you can use this to then therefore make the argument that 1 = 0, but you have to accept each individual piece as it's presented as being factual. If it's broken down this simply, you go, yeah, this seems right. But then you really read it and you go, well, 1 can't = 0. I know that, so something in here is not right. So all I'm saying is when I watched American Moon and they would make arguments that would get to a logical conclusion or what they claimed was a logical conclusion, I felt like I got to 1 = 0 and it made me go, all right, some way they got to this argument doesn't make any sense to me. So this is how I felt. This doesn't mean anything. This is just how I felt. So
isn't this part of it
wrong?
That's the thing,
X
right?
= Y, then that's already 2.
We're mathematicians right now.
It's already 2.
Yeah, there's a lot wrong in this.
Yeah.
100%. What I'm saying is when you present this to somebody in like 5th grade that's just learning algebra, you can walk them through this logical argument and say, well, look where I got 1 = 0. And then that's where you teach them like, hey, here's where you all went wrong. And you have to actually make sure you're checking.
It's kind of similar to that, like that $30 thing, like where like you go
right.
the 3 people who pay $30 for lunch and then like the guy has to give change back. And like it doesn't, it seems like you're $1 off or $2 off.
Right.
But it's just because they're doing false math in there. So
yeah, you're doing some fuckery to get to somebody going like, oh, I guess this is real. So that's how I felt. Again, you're right, Brad. That doesn't mean dick to this argument whatsoever. But That's how I felt watching
how you
it.
felt.
Maybe it's the fact that they use clown music, and maybe it's the guy's voice that made me want to bludgeon my head out about 2 hours.
I
into
mean,
the
I
whole
think
thing. But
look, we've been raised with globes and with space and astronauts, and
We all know the Earth is flat.
like, well, no, but does the Earth curve at 0.66 inches away at every mile? Does it spin around the sun at 66,600 miles an hour? Does it tilt at 66.6 degrees? Or is this all codified language for like a program that we've all been
it's like
into?
you either have to actually do every single step of it yourself, or you're making some assumptions along the way.
Right. And so we've all kind of grown up in this like cocoon of this information. So we are invested in it. So it's very difficult to unplug, for sure. And so you're going to have a natural revulsion to it. But if you just stick to just logic itself, and obviously that one, x plus y equals y can't be true. If x equals y, x plus y equals 2y, right? So you have to stay with logic, and that would have gotten through that one. And same with the moon landing. You just have to think about things like, what are they pushing off against when they leave the moon orbit? Other reports come in and contradict things. They say that the moon is within the Earth's atmosphere now. So the gravity of the Earth's atmosphere holds it to the Earth, but...
That would have made it a lot easier for them to really get there.
Yeah, right? But then what's holding, Michael Collins around the moon, right? I mean, like, it's these types of, logical contradictions that will dispel a lot of it for you. But having been ensconced in this, like, deep, it's almost like... ritualistic religion, really, and that's really difficult to. It's you're deprogramming from a cult, effectively.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Power of belief is very strong.
That's it.
That's why nobody's moving here.
Fair enough. All right. Does anybody have any other arguments we want to make? Because I think there's a lot of stuff in the meat of what you just said that I think would make another good one for
let's say
Earth piece.
I just want to do a little cui bono thing. So let's say who benefits by the moon landing,
yeah,
right?
I like it.
Well, just think about it. Like, let's not go to flat Earth, right? We don't need to go there. But there are lenses that see too far. There's images of the Chicago skyline that's 60 miles away. That shouldn't be possible on the curvature, which goes at like 8 inches per mile
Pictures of
square.
what of Chicago?
I believe that
The Chicago
is a
skyline.
refraction, but
That's what
okay.
they claim, yeah. But it refracts so often and so perfectly. And same with like seeing like what was that city in Toronto from across Lake Ontario. So anyhow, none of this really works out mathematically. So there could be more land. It could be a much bigger world than we know. That's a much more understandable scheme, right? Is that like maybe we're just like the worker bees providing the resources for the elite that live off in other lands, right? So
I love
you can
my
see that,
overlord.
right?
Settle down.
Yeah, and we're trusting the maps that we've been given, right? And we don't really have any means of verifying. And if you look at like flight radar and stuff like that, things just don't make sense. They don't go across Antarctica. So we could be in a much larger ball.
That's where Shangri-La is.
Right?
Yeah.
We're effectively, it seems flat for much longer, but we're in a much longer ball.
The biggest argument I've ever had for that, and I think this might be like another episode, but the biggest argument I've ever had for that is when you watch the way planes would fly from, say, LAX to France, they don't do a straight shot. They go curvature and up. Why would you do that if that's the least efficient way?
Well, there's a book like 16 Emergency Landings that prove that it says prove we're on a flat Earth, but I'm going to say that prove that the Earth is larger than we think. Okay. And the emergency landings don't make sense if you're going from point A to point C, but they had to make an emergency landing there.
Right.
It only makes sense when you put the map out in like the UN shape, and then you can see it's basically a straight line, right? And then other things like there's a guy who just flew north and south along the curve, right, of the globe, going like this, but the stars stayed within his view. You should expect, since the stars are like millions and millions of miles away, right, you should expect that they would be above him at a certain point, right, because he's curving the globe.
Okay.
Right, and he does it backwards and forwards.
I have a lot of arguments to look
Yeah.
up. I have a lot of things to search. Okay.
Yeah, so if we are in a much larger plane or a much larger globe, then there's a lot more land maybe that we don't know about, or whatever it might be. So that's a cui bono for saying, hey, you're on an Earth that's curves away at 0.66 inches from you and is 66,600 miles around the sun, right? That's the cui bono, is that it keeps us trapped in our little Truman Show, effectively.
I mean, That's a great movie. Any other arguments that anybody wants to make about the moon landing?
For me, it's just I would just say watch. There's tons of footage online. Watch a bunch of it, and
But just
like for me, like a lot of it came from watching that footage, and then just coming from like a filming perspective.
Mhm.
Like it's absolutely impossible. So watching the documentary actually helped because that gave me a lot of questions. Like, okay, well, what are the questions about
Right.
this? And so in that, I started to find a lot of rebuttals to it, and then there's rebuttals to those and rebuttals to those. So it's like you go down a never-ending path of this basically until
Sure.
you just reason one way or the other. But I would say just watch a lot of the actual footage, watch the documentary, and we can link a lot of videos in the descriptions of all the stuff we use to form our arguments here. But to me, it's just use your best cognition. My biggest thing against the documentary is I feel that it's very pointed, and I feel that they have no scruples about showing misinformation if it helps their point.
Fair enough. Dave?
No, don't believe anything that we say. Do your own research.
Don't pay your taxes unless you want to go back to the moon.
Learn a little bit about logical fallacies.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Like,
Logical
comment,
fallacies.
and subscribe.
That's it. Yep. And then we'll be back talking about something else that maybe we all agree on or maybe we don't. All right. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.